And welcome into another episode of Tiger Territory, part of the Foul Territory Network, the ever-expanding Foul Territory Network, a Detroit Tigers podcast. I am Kieran Steckley. With me, as always, is a man who every time he steps to the plate, it is a golden at bat. He is Cody Stavenhagen. How you doing?
Doing good. We never really got into the golden at bat thing, did we? Just the dumbest, worst idea I have ever heard. I'm generally pretty open-minded to rule changes, but that I think almost everyone agrees that's ridiculous, and I don't think it'll happen. So maybe it's just like great fodder for discussion, but probably we're not going to devote a lot more time to it because I don't have anything else to say other than just an awful, awful idea.
Yeah, I'll just add that, again, I try to be like a pretty open-minded person. I think a lot of people, like when the three-point line, came out in basketball, or hell, the DH. Probably a lot of people thought it was kind of hokey and ruined the game, and it's like, now that seems silly. It's hard for me to imagine that the golden at bat ever not seeming silly and hokey and completely unnecessary. So in agreement with you there, Cody, it was probably like put out there by someone who didn't like it to get people to just dump all over it, and then we can just kind of move on with our merry lives here. So speaking of moving on, or not moving on, depending on how you define the phrase, we got an Alex Cobb talking point, Cody, and I don't know if he's got a nickname on Baseball Reference, but in my mind, I'm just going to call him the Prius because we are getting a lot of mileage out of this signing. So shout out to Alex Cobb, aka the Prius, because we got something else to discuss with him.
Aren't Priuses supposed to like not need repairs, and like it's supposed to be a very reliable vehicle? Get a lot of mileage out of them. Or?
Well, at least from the topic wise, I'm getting a lot of mileage out of Alex Cobb here. So more quotes from Cobb has kind of come out into the ether, if you would, and one of them particularly stood out. And look, I don't want to make this anything personal with Alex. I love it when guys are honest, and he was honest when he was talking about how I kind of thought I was done. He's 36, 37 years old or whatever, and had a couple years of injuries, and he said, I'm gonna pretty close to direct quote here, so correct me if I'm wrong anywhere. Like, he was surprised by the amount of interest, and then he ends up inking a deal with the Tigers, $15 million. Everybody knows this, $15 million, then incentives for an additional up to $2 million for 1 year. And it's not the most reassuring thing you've ever heard if you're a Tigers fan, where it's like a guy would, they say if you're thinking about retirement, you're retired, and then he gets thrown a decent bag, and he's like, well, shoulder feels all right, I guess. Elbow feels all right for 15 up to $17 million. I'll give this another go. This could be absolutely nothing. But here we are in mid-December, and there's not that much else to talk about. It's also like, it's one of those things that if he just has like a Zimmerman type of season or something, we would look back and be like, there were signs. Sort of the same thing with Monty Williams when the Pistons hired him to that big contract. And it's like, I'm not really sure I like the attitude of being like, yeah, I came out of retirement for this like insane amount of money. Like, it just doesn't, the season's too long. There's too much at stake that, for that thing to just kind of like be out there and us not to talk about it. So not a direct indictment of Mr. Cobb, but just something that I think at least has made some Tigers fans a little uneasy, especially when that's your only move so far.
Yeah, I don't really think it's fair at all to the spirit of what Cobb said to equate it to like Monty Williams, which was kind of its own disaster. Like, I think Cobb wanted to play. I just don't think he thought anyone would want him. So again, maybe that's not a ringing endorsement of this signing, but seems like a guy who's fired up, who really wanted to play. He said, I didn't want to end my career. It would have been a bitter taste in my mouth to end it like last year, only pitched 16 and third innings, injury after injury. Like, he wants to be able to go out on his own terms a little bit. That's something I think he made loud and clear. He's talked about the preventative rehab he's doing, all the work he's doing to try to be a little bit healthier. Like, very much, I got the impression of someone who wants to pitch and wants to write a little bit of a better ending to the story of his career. Now, on kind of a separate note from that, though, every time I write a little more about Alex Cobb or do a little bit of a deeper dive about Alex Cobb, I do learn about another injury that I didn't realize he had before. I knew he had this injury riddled career, and there's just always like this guy when he was a rookie had a procedure where they had to saw off his top rib to like fix something up in his shoulder. They gave him the rib in a jar. He gave it to his dad. Like what are we doing here? He's had turf toe. He's had 2 knee procedures that I didn't know about. It's tough to even I don't know if they were in high school or what. So I gave the signing a hard B. I'm not incensed or impassioned about it one way or another. I think if he's able to be relatively healthy, he will be fine. And you could argue maybe that's just what the Tigers need, someone to be okay at the back end of their rotation. But I do almost every time I read or write or research a little more, I'm tempted to downgrade from that B because I know he threw 150-ish innings for a couple Giants teams. Scott Harris was a part of one of those teams, but man, seems like a very breakable pitcher, and that is a little bit scary, especially when they were, we'll see how the market shakes out, but there were other guys still available. Maybe it's, was he just the guy most willing to take a 1-year deal because he wasn't sure if there was going to be a lot of other interest? I think the more I think about it, that's kind of where I land on it. But in terms from, I do want to be clear, like a personal standpoint and investment standpoint and what's going on, I think I think fans should like Alex Cobb. I think he's going to be really determined to do the opposite of what I was just talking about and hopefully not break this season.
Yeah, I mean, he has every reason to be motivated. I want to make that clear, and that there's been no indications otherwise. It's just like that's also kind of just like a modern internet thing where he kind of clinches up here and then we have to talk about it to, like you just did, provide more context. It's just if he was the 4th most noteworthy signing or acquisition, not even just signing, we probably wouldn't have to spend this much time, that much time of Alex Cobb in our minds, right? But because that's what he become, like the 2nd or 3rd highest paid guy on the payroll or whatever with that contract. It's just one of those things where you kind of like things to mesh a little bit better. But there is absolutely a role for a healthy Alex Cobb, and you would have to the Tigers athletic training staff just got recognized by a governing body for their field with the work that they do. So that you would have to say with that combined with Fetter, with AJ Hinch, seeing everything when it comes to the game of baseball, you would have to imagine this is about as good a scenario for someone in that situation to be in. He also slots in to a needed role, which brings us to our next topic. So I want you to guess, Cody. Now, to be fair here, this includes openers. So do you have any idea off the top of your head how many people was a starting pitcher, started a game for the Tigers last season?
I did at one point, and I think I, blocked it out of my mind. 18?
No, you're a little bit over. It's 14. It's 14.
Oh, 14's not bad. I think they had 18 one year just when everyone was hurt.
Yeah, a couple of years
ago. It's not more. Surprised it's not more, though.
So that's with 3 guys that made one quote-unquote start, like Madden, Engler, and Herter. And then obviously you have Holton, who came in a healthy 8th with 9 starts there. More double-digit guys starting than you actually would think, given how we think about the 2024 team. But all that to say that you have Skubal. You have Olsen, who I think is going to be looked at as a prime bounce-back candidate for the 2025 Tigers. And then, after that, there's either guys you're hanging on hope to, guys you're giving up on, your run-of-the-mill pitchers that you just kind of have in your organization that you need starts from, or guys that aren't even here anymore, like Jack Flaherty. I guess technically he could come back. That could be a thing that happens. Or somebody you have no confidence in, like Maeda. So, like, I think as much as we call, and I'll do my Dan Hasty thing, the superpower of the Tigers, it's actually kind of murky when you look at like who's available, who's on the roster. And so I kind of, and I didn't even mention Jackson Jobe. Like I kind of want to see where we're at right now. It's December 18th on what we kind of picture as the Tigers opening day rotation, which from 3 on, I guess you could say from 4 on, because Cobb's going to be at least, in there from, so you got 2 spots there with Mize, Manning, Maeda. What are they going to do there? Montero. Is there anything to Ty Madden? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of possibilities here. And the way we look at spring training in the past, Job, like I'm not sure when we're gonna get like an actual real picture. So where do you think right now?
Yeah, for all the talk about it being murky and like all the competition and all the names, the more I think about it, I'm not sure there's actually that much up for debate. I think there are going to be a lot of guys in spring trying to pitch themselves onto the roster or into the rotation. But they're going to have to replace somebody or maybe need an injury to get there, because your ace, your opening day starter, Tarek Skubal, lock. Reese Olson, this guy was really good for the first half, had an injury, wasn't quite that good. Reese Olson's a lock. Alex Cobb, you're paying him $15 million. He's a lock. That's 3 starters. The Tigers are going to, I'm sure, keep their pitching chaos principles in their back pocket, but it sounds like they want to at least begin the season with more of a traditional 5-ish man setup. So, number 4. I don't know. You're paying Kenta Maeda $10 million. Like it or not, I think this guy is going to be given every opportunity to be in the starting rotation. Now, I will be a little bit curious. Is there a world, like the Tigers seem to love them some Brant Herter? I think the question comes down to, how is Herter best used? Is he Tyler Holton light? Is he a traditional starter? I wonder if there's a world where I say 5-ish, Maeda and Herter can almost serve as kind of not a piggyback thing, because we know like the Tigers aren't going to want to limit their bullpen in that way, but kind of like depending on the lineup, if it's right-handed heavy, Maeda could start. If it's left-handed heavy, Herter could start, and a little bit of the pitching chaos principles could apply. I think that's a realistic possibility. So then we're down to spot number 5, and I think that's all about, and may or may not be in this exact order, but talking about the open spot. Does it belong to Jackson Jobe? My understanding, I've said I think Jobe should be on the opening day roster. My understanding is the Tigers actually feel the same way. That was somewhat to my surprise, but that seemed to kind of be the vibe at winter meetings. It's not going to be just completely handed to him, but if Jackson Jobe is alive and is able to throw strikes and is anything close to what we think he can be, I believe he's going to be on the opening day roster. So that leaves guys like Casey Mize, Matt Manning, Ty Madden. I don't think Sawyer Gibson-Long will be healthy until a little bit into the season. So really I think it creates very interesting and difficult discussions for the likes of Mize and Madden, as much as Mize, I think especially, could have a very good case to be in that rotation. It's hard to find a spot for him if you're operating with that thinking. So then what do you do? Bullpen, Toledo rotation. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that in spring. But I think Skubal, Olsen, Cobb, Jobe, Maeda / Gunther, I think entering spring, those guys are kind of the clear favorites.
I just don't. I can't say that I'm enthused about Maeda being anywhere near the term favorite. And I like what you laid out there is not incorrect, like at all. However, at the same time, like if I'm Casey and I'm like, look, I have esteem as well as Maeda. Now, Maeda is just the pure contract, and he obviously has a longer track record. But like, I was a number 1 overall pick. Like I've shown flashes before I got hurt. Blah blah blah. Like, why is he getting priority over me if I'm clearly out pitching him? And so we talk about competition, and we talk about all these, like everybody earns a spot or whatever. But I'm sorry, like making Maeda, quote unquote, a favorite, and just to use your word there, but we all understood what you meant by that, like, does not scream competition, and there's going to be like nothing that Maeda could do short of like a 3-start stretch in April, which he's always notoriously a slow starter. Like, that's gonna rub people the wrong way, even if no one is actually going to bang the table for Casey Mize. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and so I think if you're Casey Mize, you have to have the type of spring, kind of like you did last spring, actually, that makes people bang the table. Maybe if Mize is great, or any of these other guys are great, Matt Manning, there's a world in which people could bang the table for them, and if Maeda is just awful, maybe the Tigers are like, okay, I mean, we just can't do this. We're trying, in AJ Hinch's words, we're trying to win the division. And so you immediately stash Maeda to the role he finished last season in. I don't think they want to do that because they're paying this guy and they want to get something out of him. But if that's that's why there is some wiggle room. I think it's honestly more dependent on Kenta Maeda looking unusable than any of these other guys looking good. That is one thing that could open a spot.
Remind everybody that Maeda had a 6.09 ERA last year and was negative 1.7 WAR. So, like, it's not
bad. It's terrible. I'm not excited about it. But this is the business. This is the reality. Now, that leads to another question, though. Like, should the Tigers just sign another pitcher for as good as they are at their pitching mastery? For as much as I think they can get more out of Herter, or maybe even Mize, for as much as I think they could optimize Alex Cobb, like, there's still some dudes out there in the market. Fan favorite Walker Buehler is still out there in the market. The more I think about Roki Sasaki, dude's not coming to Detroit. Like, it's kind of funny we've even entertained that as much as we have. But they could still add someone if you and just confine Kenta Maeda to the bullpen. Maybe that's the more common sense thing to do. But I don't think it will happen like that.
Well, speaking of common sense, you're and just bring it back here because we've been talking about a lot of things. You're pretty firm on that Jackson Jobe opening day talking point that you just laid out there, because I think I speak for a lot of people where we're kind of bracing for we just want to ramp him up in Toledo real quick, get him a little bit more time to work on his, and then we throw out the buzzwords like work on his secondary pitches, work on, we just don't want to. We don't want to, overextend him like right away. Like, we've seen this script before, just in general, not a direct indictment of the Tigers, but just like we've seen this script over and over in baseball. And I have said that it would make no sense to put him on your playoff roster like they did last year and then to send him down to Toledo to start the year when clearly he is one of your best pitchers and your number 2. You could argue the number 1 most quote unquote pure talented pitcher that you have in your organization. So and Scott Harris, optionality, all these things, it screams it could happen, but you seem very firm on that based on what your reporting and conversations.
That's my understanding with where the team is right now. I think you don't totally shut that door. Speaking in absolutes in baseball is probably one of the most dangerous things you can do. And I've done that before and been wrong before. Right now, I think the Tigers really want Jackson Jobe to be on the opening day roster. It's still, I can hear those words coming out of Scott Harris's mouth, though. Like, we believe if Jackson throws a greater volume of innings in AAA and is able to harness his ability to command the strike zone with all of his pitches and utilize different shapes, like, I can hear that in my head. So I wouldn't completely rule it out, but also, again, look at what AJ Hinch said. Like, we want to win the AL Central. The Tigers, remember last year, AJ and Scott were getting kind of poo-pooed for setting expectations really low and letting the players talk that way. They are talking about things in a different manner. So I do think that backs up the idea that they don't want to play the service time game. They don't want to put him in AAA just for him to be in AAA. I think they believe he gives them the best chance to win if he's anything close to what he can be. There's some things he can continue to do better. Attack hitters in the strike zone, not just rely on chase with the slider, be able to generate swing and miss in the zone. So some things like that, that he certainly has the stuff to do. It is the the type of thing that these guys could talk about, like he needs to refine in AAA. But the sheer stuff, dude, it's so good. It's better than everyone except maybe Scooble, and that's why I think he's going to be on the opening day roster.
Oh man, there's a lot of mind pretzels that could be had here. Now that I'm just going through every scenario in my head, every scenario where it's like, Jobe Mize is killing it in spring. You can't do anything about Maeda, but you're going to give him the shot because you're paying him the money, and then all of a sudden Jobe is the guy that just kind of gets squeezed out there for these kind of, not like political in the traditional sense, but like sort of like these like off the field kind of reasons or whatever.
Right. That's why I want to say, like, I don't think the Tigers are going to do I don't know. I wonder if this fifth rotation spot, let's say the Maeda spot, is more of like a floating spot. Maybe Maeda, Mize, Herter are all on the roster, and it's like depending on that day's hitters, or maybe it's even kind of a 6-man thing where one day is just a bullpen day. If the Tigers believe they can do that without taxing their pins so much, we saw them kind of do that last year. I think that may end up being the most interesting thing to watch.
Well, regardless, what I want is for so you have AJ Hinch talking about we're trying to win the division. I want the moves that are made and the roster constructed in a manner that reflects that. You know what I mean?
Well, if I were trying to win the division, I'd probably sign Jack Flaherty if I thought he was healthy. But I'm not making these moves, so.
Well, there you go. That leads us to another sort of talking point in baseball right now. Jeff Passan put out a sort of a summarization of Major League Baseball's analysis on arms and their their use and the increase in injuries and blah blah blah. And to be honest, that report was never meant to be groundbreaking, so therefore nothing groundbreaking happened in it. But I do think it's worth us addressing here, Cody, because for me personally, I have sort of a mental conundrum when I watch baseball now, especially teams like the Tigers, who are really, really good at utilizing their pitching talents. So I see guys that, and I'm not going to try to name names because I don't want it to be directly linked to anybody, but I see guys that you hear reports that they're throwing 94 in West Michigan, and then you see him hit 100.8 in Detroit, and part of me thinks that's just not natural, and not in the PED sense natural. That's just not natural for someone's output to increase that much, and it can't be good long term. I knew a guy in college that he was a JUCO pitcher, and he was a bartender at one of the places on the strip, and he couldn't extend his right arm all the way out. He showed me left arm all the way out, right arm, at just under, barely 90 degrees, really, just a little bit over. So it's like that stuff's real. That's just high school and JUCO. You know what I mean? And we see reports about kids, throwing 14 years old and they're throwing 88 or, whatever these numbers are. And I just don't think that's good. I just don't think that's good overall for health of players, for the game, for the long-term effects. That doesn't mean I have any solutions, and I don't enjoy these guys throwing gas, because it is one of the most exciting things in the game. But man, I just don't know. I just don't know if we're on a good path, and it's nobody's fault. Players are trying to get scholarships, get drafted, get to the league, get paid. They're obviously not wrong. Front offices are trying to utilize the players they have to the greatest extent. Coaches are trying to get the most out of their players. Nobody's at fault here. I'm not blaming anybody, right, but it just doesn't feel good.
No, I kind of view MLB's arm injury epidemic kind of like social media and disinformation and lack of trust in the news. It is a clear problem that is very bad and has very serious consequences, and yet there's no real solution. People aren't going to stop being on social media. People aren't going to stop watching TikTok videos. People are likely not going to regain trust in traditional news outlets. or if any of those, if trust can be regained, it's going to take decades, not a few months. Like there's no real remedy. Pitchers aren't going to stop throwing as hard as they can, because if they do, they aren't going to get jobs. Teams aren't going to ask pitchers to take it easier, because if they do, they are not going to win games. Usage is really interesting. Like for a long time, we thought of arm injuries as a workload thing, but if you're throwing max effort, that is taxing your arm extremely, even if that's just for an inning at a time. So teams like the Rays, and you do have to wonder, are the Tigers entering this equation? Like, can burn out arms and cycle through arms really fast and just replace them with another? That's a flaw in that's a unintended consequence of being really good at pitching development. And man, I don't know what you do. I do personally believe, like having played, done the whole club baseball thing, playing 80 games in the summer, it starts at a really young level. Kids are entering high school, college, the big leagues with arms that are damaged. So if there's any solution, it's probably that. But how do you fix that? Stop playing travel baseball. Parents don't want to do that because they want their kids to be as good as possible. Kids don't want to do that because they like playing the game. Like it's a really tough, really delicate situation. I was a little disappointed in the MLB study report that came out, because it wasn't really a study. We didn't really learn anything tangible, but it's kind of been framed as like, this is step one of what's going to lead to deeper and deeper studies, and maybe one of these days, some kind of solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have to be like put on its face a little bit, and people are going to have to look in the mirrors. And I would equate it also to like AAU and basketball, and how that's kind of changed, like, the culture of that sport, where I just don't know if there's really any like that much redeeming value for this. And so I have to shout out my dad real quick. He was ahead of his time. Like I played baseball my entire life, never pitched a single inning. Didn't want me to throw my arm out. I don't think he had the wherewithal to see where the game was going here, but he gets to take credit for that, because the old thing still works pretty well over here. Little touching up on some other Tigers news. We have the return to the organization of fan favorite, friend of the podcast, Akil Baddoo. And if you recall, they had reached what was the number? Like 1 point. He was tendered at 1 point. Was it 6? 1 point.
A lot of the reporting out there wasn't accurate, because it was assuming he was arbitration eligible. Akil is not arbitration eligible. He didn't play enough games last year. So despite being ARB eligible, or agreeing to terms the year before, he wasn't ARB eligible this year. So he, I believe, making like 80% of last year's salary, something like that. Not sure the exact figure, but he's making more than the league minimum. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, and then he was waived to make room for Alex Cobb. So shout out the first guy on this DFA, excuse me, to make room for Alex Cobb, first subject of this podcast here. And now he cleared, so therefore he has been outrighted to Toledo. I hope there is something good that comes of Akil Baddoo's like time here. Like I would like to see him have a couple moments. I think we all recognize what his ceiling is, and and what, like, on a team trying to contend for a championship that's, I would say, relatively deep in the outfield, all things considered, like what his role would be. But he's too fun, and there's too many attributes that he has that you just don't want to lose as an organization. So I'm happy he's back in the organization. But I also kind of hope he sees this as still an opportunity to contribute to a winning culture, which, if I were him and I'm looking at the guys in front of him, I'm not sure, me personally, if I would have that attitude. Yeah. But I hope he does, because I think there's still like impact to be had from Akil Baddoo, I think.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about Akil. I kind of feel bad for him, because I just don't think there's much opportunity in terms of like actual future here in Detroit, and there might have been for him elsewhere. Say Akil Baddoo, and I don't even know what the Marlins outfield is, but just put him in the system of a bad team, and I feel like he could play a lot given his skill set. Akil, I'm surprised he cleared waivers, but I do think it's probably related to the fact his salary is going to be a tick higher than the average waiver claim, even though it's nothing astronomical. I'm sure that played a role in him clearing waivers. So the Tigers are happy to have him back, even though they might not really have a grand plan for him anymore. He's a left-handed bat, still a little bit of upside, obviously brings the speed to the table, and he still has an option. So he's usable. He's not obviously on the 40-man right now, but you do wonder if a left-handed outfielder gets hurt, could Akil Baddoo once again be the next guy up? If there would have to be a 40 spot available. I do want to make that loud and clear. But yeah, that's kind of all I got to take away. I was almost excited to see Akil elsewhere, kind of see what he can do. Surprised he got through waivers, but pretty good depth to have inside your system.
Yeah, he played in, pulling it up right now, he played in, I just had it, 31 games. He had 73 at-bats, 82 plate appearances. So hopefully, like I said, hopefully it's managed in a way where he can find some rhythm. And then, like, what was it, Houston last year, we got called up, and it's like he wasn't going to play more than like a game or two or whatever. But AJ made it a point to say, like, he's still part of this, and blah blah blah. So like I hope that resonates. But look, remember, like, Riley Green, we're still going to be holding our breath, like, health wise. You know what I mean? Parker Meadows plays a style that lends itself to soft tissue injuries. It just does. He had one last year. And Kerry Carpenter, like, hopefully his offseason regimen has been adjusted, but like, a back thing is always scary, especially with how hard he swings. And we can't say for sure, like, what kind of year two, like, Wenzel Perez will have. You know what I mean? Like, things can happen. It's baseball. Things can happen. And he is a valuable asset to, in my opinion, to have in your organization. So happy to see him come back. All right, Cody, anything else before we jet out of here?
No, nothing really. A couple little housekeeping things. The Tigers seem to have their catching depth. It's Brian Serven. He's on a minor league deal. I would expect him to be the primary guy in Toledo, and if there's an injury, maybe could get back up. They also added a pitcher, right-hander Ryan Miller, who I believe we saw in Comerica Park last year. So just wanted to make sure everyone is up on those updates.
All right. And it literally just came out a couple hours ago. Nolan Arenado will not be going to Houston. He will not he will exercise his no trade clause should a trade be agreed to. So
no trade Nolan.
No. Man, if we were that new Cardinals podcast, it was its Cardinal.
That'd be the graphic.
Yeah, Cardinal territory, right? Shout out Cardinal territory. That'd be no trade Nolan. That's a good one. All right, I want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you everybody for subscribing on YouTube and Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. As a reminder, we will have an episode on Monday, the 23rd. So make sure we are part of your holiday routine, because we're still going to be there for it. We ain't going nowhere. I mean, we're going to be places, but, like, the podcast is not going anywhere for the holiday. So hope everybody, if you're traveling this weekend, has a safe and fun holiday celebration with your family and all that stuff. So for Cody Stavenhagen, I'm Kieran Steckley. Everybody have a great day.